There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean Breeze Books. Welcome back to my channel. I have a very special presentation. Last night I did a live interview with the queer Canadian writer Bradley Sommer, who lives in Calgary, at his Saskatoon book launch at McNally Robinson. And McNally Robinson has kindly agreed to let me post their recording of that interview. Please enjoy. Our chat focused on Bradley Sommer's most recent novel, We Are All of Us Left Behind, which was just published a few weeks ago and which I just finished reading a couple days ago. So here it is for your viewing pleasure.
You going good? Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Benjamin Johnson, and I'm the Assistant Event Coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers here in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory, which is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. As we listen to our speakers share their words today, may we also recognize the Indigenous stories that have been shared on this land for time immemorial. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of We Are All of Us Left Behind by Bradley Sommer, published by Freehand Books. Joining us tonight as guest host is Sean Mooney. Please note that this event is being live streamed, so just be aware of the web camera up at the front and to your right. I'd also like to ask you to silence your phones for the duration of the event. If you'd like to purchase copies of We Are All of Us Left Behind after the event, we have them up here on the signing table and also on the desk by where you first walked in. You're welcome to get your copy signed before you purchase it, but please remember to pay for it before you go. Bradley Sommer is an award-winning novelist whose work has been published in over 20 countries and translated into multiple languages. In addition to his 4 novels, he's had nearly 40 short stories published in various literary magazines and collections. He was a recipient of the 2016 Alberta Lieutenant Governor's Award for Emerging Artists, and more recently was writer-in-residence at the Banff Centre for the Writers Guild of Alberta, the Alexandra Writers' Centre Society, and the W.O. Mitchell Ursa Retreat Centre. Learn more at bradleysommer.com. Sean Mooney is a Saskatoon-based booktuber. Booktube is the community of avid readers with channels on YouTube. His channel is Sean Breathes Books. He primarily reads and discusses literary fiction, including works in translation and by queer, Western Canadian, and women writers. Please give them a round of applause. All right, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. I know it's a Wednesday night and all that. It's the problem with being 6'4".
How's that there?
Yeah, that should be good. Yeah, and again, thank you, Sean, very much. We had a lovely chat on his channel, and then he invited me out afterwards for a reading here, and I was like, hell yeah. I love the road trip, and Saskatoon's a favorite town. Came through many times as a kid, so always happy to make the trek out. And it was a lovely drive, and it's also about 15 degrees warmer here than it is in Calgary. So, We Are All of Us Left Behind. I actually wrote this novel about 10 years ago, and it has sat on the shelf, and I pulled it out every year since, and I love the story, and I just kept working at it and working at it and working at it, and I got it to a point where I thought it was good. And I sent it to my agent, and she said, no, it's a straight white male narrative. And I said, okay. So then I turned the character gay, and it got published. Which is kind of a flippant way of saying too, though, is that and I would imagine we're going to chat about this, but there is a heavily weighted voice in queer literature now that identity, gender identity, sexual identity becomes a plot. And I wanted to write a story where that identity is part of a character and that character is working through a plot. Trying to gun for something a little more inclusive as far as a character is not defined by one thing. So this is a story about a young man, and he's in a small oil town, and that town happens to have dinosaurs all around it and pump jacks pumping away as well. He's been orphaned, and he wants to trek across to find his last known relative, who is his grandfather, who lives in Serbia. I'm going to start with a little bit of a reading, and then Sean and I will have a chat, and then we'll thank you very much, and we'll have a party afterwards, I guess.
So I'm just going to start right at the beginning because it's very hard to read a full book in about 45 minutes. My name is Molly. I'm 14 years old. I'm glad to meet you. Only one of those things is true, which is okay. I type them and click the button to send them to a guy in this chat room who asked me a bunch of questions. I don't feel bad about these lies for a lot of reasons. I think I use them only when I have to. I've told so many and can see when they help out. They're all I have at the moment, and they're a tool that I'm used to using now, and I get better using with it the more I need money. And money's needed really pretty badly right now. Lies don't run out like money or time or people do. Lies don't go missing like parents and friends can, no matter what their reasons. There are always more. So right now, I tell them to whoever sits, lit up in their own computer screen glow. The computer chimes like a bell. It does this every time that somebody writes something. He asks me into a private chat, and I click through into it with him. It always gets bad in the private chats, but that has to be part of it. He asks me a bunch of questions, one bell sound after another, and I answer them in turn. I'm wearing a dress my mom gave me. There are flowers printed on it. It's green, my favorite color. Only one of these things is true, which is okay. I don't know this guy or even where he is in the world, and that's the best part. He doesn't know me or where I am in the world either. Whoever's on the other end of this is going to full on deserve what's coming. I'm going to get what I deserve too. I know it. It always just happens and to work out that way. Can't much escape it, so best accept it, that it's on the way, and deal with it when it happens. To strangers, lies go easy from me. They don't matter. To friends, they're harder because each one twists upon the other, turning the real me into something else. But I don't have any friends, not here, not anymore. No matter to who, the more the lies fill up the past, the harder it is to keep them straight and from piling into one another. One told today crashes into one told last week or yesterday or an hour ago, but right now, it's easy because there's nobody here but me sitting to the sound of an air conditioner running hard under the window. It's late afternoon, hot outside. I can't put on more clothes without sweating. That's why I just sit here in my boxers. It's been like this for days. The curtains are drawn. There's nothing much to be missing out there, but for the view of a parking lot. Past that's the highway, and the strip of shops on the other side, then a few rows of housetops, then the valley. That river cuts dinosaur bones out of the dust, enough for the university to take notice and come digging. The hills behind give oil, enough to see no one nodding donkey from the next. They're up there on the ridge. I remember when you could only see just one, all spinning parts unceasing. Now there are 7. I can't remember when the others showed up. Aren't more than 1,000 people in this town. It's where I grew up for 18 years. I went out to see the trailer, still sat a half-hour's gravel road walk past the town line and down a bit of a dirt track from there. It's pretty broken up. My room was wrecked, broken bottles and beer can bongs with burnt craters in the aluminum dents. The bookshelf was broken and all my posters were torn off. Someone shit in the corner, some animal made a home in the kitchen cabinet. No one's there now, though. Didn't think there would be. But something made me go check that my dad wasn't around again. 18 years this town, that's a lie though. I haven't been back here in more than 4 years. That's when I had to leave. I came back because there's nowhere else familiar. And these small places don't change much. Of course, a lot of people who lived here knew me, but none do now. The kids I knew from back then, most of them are gone elsewhere. Most here grow up with the purpose to leave. Also, a kid changes a lot in 4 years, becomes a stranger at a passing glance. I haven't left this motel room much anyhow. The guy at the pawn shop, he didn't know me, but he knew I had money enough to buy this old laptop, and he was probably happy to get rid of it, judging from the skin of dust on it. I'm not too good at computers, but for what I need it for, I'm good enough. That guy knew my money was as good as the next, and that's all. This place exists between better ones. At the right distance to stop for rest before moving on in the morning. There are enough people passing through here to keep 2 hotels going. Basic rooms telling on the geography, a good enough bed, a toilet, a shower. Of the 2 motels, this one had free internet. This one, with the curtains drawn and the hot sunlight creeping in yellow around the edges, like some stain on the wall, is where I set up my pawn shop computer. This one, with the constant rattle of the air conditioner underneath the window that drowns the highway noise out, is where I type the words, "Sure, I can send you a picture." Then I type, "If you send me one first." The cursor flashes on and off and on. I've done this a bunch of times over the week, and I'm never sure what the next chime will bring. I pull a leg up and rest my chin on my knee, run my fingers light over the scars there, knee to ankle and back up again. Feeling the smooth bumps, but not really paying attention. I stare at the screen and wait. I figured out a lot of ways to get by. None are good. Most of them are done because they have to be done. I'm getting good at this one. It's paid out 3 times, and it's a lot easier than some of the other ways I've earned enough to eat. I'm still waiting for the computer to ring to see what he sends back. I get up and stretch my legs. My armpits are sweaty, and even though it's trying hard, the air conditioner can't get the room cool. At least here I get to sit and watch TV. There's a bed if I want to lie down, though I can't sleep. My dad told me I didn't sleep much since I was born, and that holds true till now. There's a shower when I need it and food from the vending machine near the office. I like the dill pickle flavored chips. Second favorite is jalapeno and cheddar. They're good too. Sometimes at night, with the curtains drawn back, I just watch out the window for the cars coming and going on the highway. The rigs, I can't help always squinting to see the driver, to see if that's the silhouette of my dad. No matter if I close my eyes, no matter the time, I can hear them coming and have to look. Those late hours are my favorite because they're quiet. Sometimes there's no car out there for half an hour, sometimes more. Sometimes I'll open the door and sit a chair in the parking lot in front of my room. It's still hot outside. It's late in the year for it. Breeze or still air don't matter. It comes up in waves from the pavement. But it'll be quiet under the streetlights along the highway, and I can sit alone and listen to the air conditioners running in the other rooms around me until later, when the last one shuts off and all that's left is the distant metal rattle of them pump jacks up on the ridge. And there's the free internet, which is what I really needed. I go back to the computer and type the words, "Are you there?" And I send them. I wait. Sometimes they don't send anything back, just disappear like they were never there, nothing left of them except the typed words to scroll back through to see if there's anything I can use, and there never is. I'm always curious about who's on the other end, but I'll never know. Everyone's looking for someone here, all looking for different things, and I'm whatever they want. It's easy to figure out if you pay a little attention, they'll tell you. To strangers, my name is Molly or Mary or Martin or whatever. I'm blonde or chubby or small or whatever. I'm a schoolgirl or a choir girl or an after practice locker room boy, whatever. I'm lots of things, but none of them. On to something good. I wait. I know he's still there because the computer hasn't told me he's gone. Maybe he's scared or nervous, or maybe he's trying to take that perfect picture to send. Maybe his wife or girlfriend walked in, or maybe he's pulling the blinds closed, hiding the outside world from what he's doing. Maybe it's going to get that bad. Maybe he's thinking of what else to say, or maybe he's just trying to figure out the point of all this. The computer bell rings and he's typed, "Yes, I'm here." Then he sends, "Where are you? Alone?" I'll leave it there. Looking up too. Sure, yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Lovely opening, Bradley.
Thank you.
So, I don't think very many people here know much about you. So let's start there. Who are you?
That's a great place to start. Yeah. I am Bradley Sommer. I live in Calgary. I was born in Australia. But I grew up in Calgary for the most part. That's where mom and dad still are and all the family. Carrying on from there, I have been writing for about, well, since grade 8. Mrs. Rutledge's class. No, it was Mrs. Buckingham's class.
Mrs. Buckingham, I thought, don't make that mistake.
No, exactly. Mrs. Rutledge was the one that made me get rid of my Australian accent.
Oh, and I was gonna, so tell us that story.
So that was early days, and I had to say corn in front of the whole class without the Australian accent. And this was probably grade 3 or so. And I had to stand up there and say corn with the R, the Canadian R. And I'm sure that wouldn't happen today, but
What would it sound like it was an Australian
it's
accent?
corn. So anyhow, after that, Mrs. Buckingham was in high school, and she was an English teacher, and she had an after classes, after hours creative writing class. She did it as an extracurricular thing, and I went in there and fell in love with writing, and have been doing so ever since. And my first actually writing experience was with a critique group in the basement of McNally Robinson in Calgary when they still had one there. We all were shunted down into the basement on cold wintry nights, and we spent hours critiquing each other's work. And there was a group probably about 6 to 8 of us at any time. And we went on for about 20 years together. And just the last couple of years, everybody went their separate ways. Nothing, no animosity, no gossip to spill. Yeah, and so my first book came out with a publisher out of Vancouver, Nightwood Editions, and then I was at the Surrey International Writers Conference, and I was at the bar, as you do, and was chatting with a lady at the bar, and she turned out to be a literary agent. And I pitched her the next book, which was Fishbowl, and she said, send me a copy, and she read it on the flight down to San Diego and sent me an offer to represent a couple weeks later. That one landed amazingly well. It went to St. Martin's Press, Macmillan, sold all over the world. Was optioned for film for probably about 10 years as well. And then that followed up with Extinction, which was a story about the last bear on Earth and the ranger tasked to protect the bear. And of course, the poachers show up and want to take the bear for their own. So that one's a rip-roaring adventure thriller style. That one was picked up in the UK and in the States and all over as well. And then this is the next one. And again, like I said, this one was sitting on the shelf for 10 years. I actually wrote it right after Fishbowl, but it needed time to sit and marinate. And once it was done marinating, it landed pretty quickly with Freehand. So, yeah.
So you told us a bunch of stuff, and is only one of those things true?
Well, they are. They are all true as a writer would put them.
Okay.
So, there might be a bit of hyperbole in there. I'm told I exaggerate, and I say, no, it's hyperbole, which is the writerly word for exaggeration. So
you're all that was left behind. Where did this story come from, or how did it come to you?
So after finishing Fishbowl was a very strange book. It had 8 different points of view. It had it's a story about a goldfish falling off of a high-rise building and witnessing 8 different lives as the goldfish fell towards the ground. And the premise on that one was we don't live our own lives, we live each other's together. So it was basically taking all the major events, milestones of a life, and witnessing it horizontally instead of vertically, meaning not in one person, but in many different people. And I needed something that was more concrete. And this story has it basically runs in real time as opposed to being all fractured and fragmented. And I just wanted to experiment with a different way of storytelling. And that's basically what drives any book that I'm working on, is I want to try something different. So this one, you start from that hotel room in the prairies there, and you really don't have a break in the action or anything until the end of it. So it's trying to, instead of hitting the highlights of what's interesting and what will, grab a reader and keep their attention. You're trying to make those lower periods in a plot cycle actually interesting as well. So it was really started out as that. And I actually sat down, was in a little bungalow in Calgary, 1929 bungalow. And I had this is very similar to the desk that I had. It was just a chair in the living room. And I sat down one weekend and I probably put out 20 or 30,000 words on it. So probably a quarter of the book was written in that weekend. And my husband went off to the market and I was sitting there writing away in the morning. And he came back and he's like, "You still there?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, he just went to the market." But he had actually gone to the market, gone to visit a friend, had a coffee, went for dinner and came back and it was dark out. And it was just that perfect thing where you lose yourself in the writing and the voice and the process. And that was the genesis of this one for sure.
How about the main character? How did he take shape, or what was the first germ of his incredible character?
I wanted a character, and like I said at the beginning, this character didn't have any identifiable sexuality before one of the later iterations of the book. And what it was is I wanted a character that a teenage male or early 20s male could identify with and read. And that was how the character came about. So I was looking at, as a coming of age story, you got to look at all the silly things that kids do. You have to forgive them the silly things because they're learning. So I wanted to have a character that was learning himself and the world around him. And through his many trials and troubles, I think he changes quite dramatically from the beginning to the end. And that's where I wanted to get across with this character. So.
Absolutely, and there's also a through line of the authenticity of his voice. There's incredible character work that you've done with that through line.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, and with that, I wanted the voice to be something a little bit different, not polished like a lot of character voices are. And because he's also the narrator, the narrator's voice had to be. I wanted something that showed he was a very clever fellow. He was a very smart fellow, but he wasn't traditionally trained, and he wasn't, well educated through the normal routes. And so his voice I thought it was a lot of fun to write because I was trying to make something that comes across very intelligent, but also quite naive at the same time.
Nailed it. He's also unnamed, and there's a whole bunch of literary theory about what when you don't have your main character or your narrator, it has no name, is nameless. There's theories that that's the best way to tell a story it's kind of a wandering, where he's wandering, and certainly your character is questing to find oneself. But I don't care what those people said. Why did you not name him?
In an early draft, his name was given right at the end, and it was picked out by the editor, and I think rightly so, as being a bit of a trite gotcha moment, like you've been through this journey with this person, and here's your little reward is his name. I quite often write, and then some of my writing has been criticized in that a lot of my main characters, I show a lot of what they're experiencing, but I don't tell what they're feeling about what they're experiencing. And what I find is beneficial in that step is if you have a character that you can immerse yourself in, you're more likely to experience what that character is experiencing. So if this character had a name and you're reading it and you're going through it and you're like, oh, this is happening to so-and-so, you're one step removed. Yeah. So what I wanted to do, and I did this with Extinction too, is that I wanted to have that character acting all the way through. I wanted that character's reactions to be known, his feelings to be known, but not his thoughts on the feelings, because I want the reader to transpose themselves onto the character. And hopefully that way you have this one step removed. When you have a name, you have a one step removed kind of relationship with the protagonist. In this way, I think you get to be more immersed in what that protagonist is experiencing.
Interesting. And so the earlier version where you revealed the name, was it Bradley Sommer?
No, it was Garrett.
Garrett, okay.
Just random, out of the blue character.
So many interesting things happening in the novel with time. There's a preoccupation that's really unusual with past, present, and future, and how they all kind of warp and morph and flow one into the other in interesting ways. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, it was, and again, like this is a very linear book as far as
Absolutely.
there's very few breaks in it. I had to give him motion-induced narcolepsy just so I could take a break from it. So whenever he's traveling from one place to the next, he'll have a snooze. But other than that, you're fully immersed in this
That's
character. With time, I think one thing I've noticed as I aged, and I'm now a ripe old age, is that time is changing from when I was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, the summer lasted forever, and the actual machinery of time was much more noticeable. What I notice now is events are more noticeable than time. So, what I will remember of this whole trip is not, sitting in the car and driving out here for 6 hours and spending weeks leading up to it in anticipation and all of this. It'll be the event that I remember, and warmly. And I want to thank you very much for inviting me out to do this. That was very kind of you, and to sit here with me.
Let's make it memorable. And one other theory I found about an unnamed narrator is that it sets that character outside time. Does that resonate for you?
Thinking about it, yeah, I could see that working here. And here's one thing when it's talking about a book I've written is I never want to put words into someone else's mouth, because the thing is with any book, it's actually part of a conversation. This is what I'm putting down there. And when I write, I always am very conscious of I have to have a thematic question and a thematic statement, but I never have a thematic answer. And the reason being is because I think that the reader has to supply that. And if I were to sit there and fill in all the bits and pieces for the reader, then the experience would be more akin to a lecture than actually reading and exploring the book yourself. So I didn't have that consciously in mind, but I can totally see how it fits in. Yeah.
This is the second time I've interviewed Bradley Sommer, and he is famous for turning the tables. So the one I did on my channel, he was asking me as many questions as
I like conversation and learning about
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
So your main character, he lies like a rug. Why is that an important part of his character?
I think it's an important part of humanity. And the reason is that we all want to keep certain parts of ourselves hidden from each other to present ourselves in a more positive light than we might shine if we were to be 100% transparent with each other. And so I think with this character, he uses lies a lot through to propel his ability to be able to complete his trip. And he's very adept at using manipulation and lies, but by the end of it, he completely runs out of lies and has to confront himself. And so I think that's an important journey that everybody is going to take, whether it's as extreme as what this fellow goes through as far as, the lies he's telling and how he's using them to manipulate people. And the way he justifies his lies is interesting too, because he's justifying them as I'm lying to make things better, yet things consistently get worse. And so when he has his revelation is when he learns the value of truth. And also I think there's a humility in truth. If you can present yourself to somebody in a way that you are exposed and not necessarily all the brightest and shiniest things, that there's a humanity that happens not just for the person, but the people you are interacting with. So people will see you more in a human light than in, some form of vaunted light. So.
Holy smokes, you put your main character through his paces.
If you don't torture your main character, you don't have a book.
Well, you've got a book. A lot of violence. He just keeps getting himself into one violent scrape after another at a certain, I'd say the middle half of the novel. So why are you so cruel?
I guess I needed an outlet somewhere. I'm very kind otherwise. I think part of that is, there's extremes that you have to go to make these lessons land with yourself and with other people. I'm very familiar with all of the places that this character travels through and some of the situations as well. I spent many a year working up in the oil sands camps at Fort Mac, and seeing all the fun that happens up there. My One of my early careers was an archaeologist, and I spent many a summer month in a motel on the highway side, just watching the shenanigans that happen with unmitigated humanity. And so he's in that situation. He's not in a situation where he's economically stable. He's not in a situation where he's emotionally stable or socially stable. So I think a lot of the violence that happens in the book is twofold. One is that it has to be that way just to have him learn his lessons, but also it is the position that he's in as well, as far as his socioeconomic position in the world. So
Fair enough. I think you said in your introduction to the novel that he's ultimately on a quest to find his only family. His parents are gone and there's nobody else. And that he has a grandfather in Serbia, Milos Milic, and he is a famous writer in Serbia. So tell us a little bit more about that. That isn't a spoiler.
yeah. Well, the name Milic comes from a fellow that I met in Serbia. So my husband's Serbian. I've been back to former Yugoslavia many times. And we were hanging out in a hotel bar and having a good chat. And he said, "Put me in one of your books." So here he is.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's what he wanted, but that's how he wound up there. But I also found that there's a lot of, in Canadian fiction in particular, there's a lot of stories of people coming here and landing here and figuring out how to live here, but there's very few where people from here go elsewhere. And I think to throw him into a situation where he's in quite a foreign place where even language and culture is a major issue of getting by day to day was quite important. And also I found in the late 90s, I did a trip through Australia for a year. I attended bar, I lived in my car, I lived with friends, all this kind of stuff. And I learned so much about myself in that trip. You become self-reliant when you're in situations like that. And you learn also, I think there's a lot of good people in this book too. And the kindness of strangers is not a cliche, it's real, it exists. And what I found in my travels was whenever you're in a scrape, somebody will be there to help. And he does get that help as well. So wanted to kind of highlight all of that, but also tread a little bit where a lot of modern Canadian fiction doesn't go.
Grandpa was a famous writer, and your main character is a writer wannabe, or he
Aspires, yeah.
aspiring writer. So tell us more about that. Is your main character you in that sense?
No, and I never wanted to write a story about a writer, because that's what writers write about when they run out of things to write about. So he wants to be, because I think one thing that writing does, especially when you're young, and even carrying on, is it's a way to think. It's a way to sit down and examine a certain topic from as many different angles as you can. And that's what I really enjoy about writing any book, is I usually start with a question that I want to just dig into and understand. So with that, a lot of the writing in Serbia, and I've read quite a bit in translation, there's a lot of beautiful writing. It's very different than what we read here, what we produce here. A lot of it's very much founded in a very, very deep sense of place and history. And I would always, whenever we would travel through former Yugoslavia, I would read, the local greats. I would do literary tourism. I still do this wherever I go. I usually know a bit about the history, but more I'm reading while we're traveling. And so I also wanted to kind of highlight that a bit, that, there's amazing works in translation that I think can really drive a lot of writing forward locally as well.
So you've kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I don't want to botch this, so I'm going to read a little bit from what I wrote down. Except for the characters who want to kill him, The rest are deeply drawn to him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of deep connection in this novel, and the protagonist. He's very vulnerable, and he responds to it. And people that, again, the ones that don't want to kill him, they kind of love him almost instantly. And he's damaged psychologically, and so sometimes he doesn't know. He kind of screws up the intimacy, and so there's some memorable scenes about all that. But I don't even know if I have a question, but that was just a wonderful part of this. Just like you said, there's a lot of there's a whole lot of love.
Yeah, and I think that's a great observation that you made through there. And I think with that, it's a matter of, again, as he goes through his journey, he's learning how to become exposed as far as his truth goes and who he is. And I think the more that he does that, the more he is received positively. And most of the time, if you look at the correlation between his troubles is usually when he is in his devious spells. And so it's kind of this positive reinforcement that happens where, oh, you know what, if I'm not, the big tough guy that can handle it all myself all the time, if I actually chat with people about my problems and issues, I usually get a response where people are kind and caring towards that. And through that, he learns how to work through those troublesome teenage years. So, yeah.
So he's also, I don't know, is he gay, bisexual? I don't know if he knows by the end.
Yeah.
Certainly maybe not heterosexual.
No, he's not. And the grand scheme of, the character's sexuality, and I did say it flippantly at the beginning, and I've said it several times that way, because it did play out that way. I was told it was a straight heterosexual narrative, which to me was kind of weird too, because his sexuality absolutely doesn't matter to the course of the story. And so, I was looking at it and thinking on it, and I thought, what would be an interesting twist that you could do to this story is have him be queer in some description, but his character fundamentally doesn't change from when he was written in a heterosexual light. So with that, I think there's a lot of modern fiction that queer becomes the plot, and there's a lot of good, strong writing of the queer voice, and a lot more than even when I was growing up. When I was growing up, a lot of the queer voice was, a queer character was comedic or tragic, and that's the two things that you had. And there was very few writers that were looking at a queer character in a larger milieu of they're not just their identity. And so I wanted this character not just to be one way or the other, what have you, because truly it doesn't matter for the course of the story. And in my experience, it doesn't matter as a human being either.
So we had a fascinating discussion. I'd like us to do a shorter version of that. I think probably most people here know about the Bechdel test, but start there and then move on to the Vito-Russell test.
Yeah, so I was looking into this because again, there's a big upsurge in queer writing, and again, it's fantastic. It's good to have that breadth of voice and that exploration of a worthy topic, because it is a different way of existing. So the Bechdel test is a test in fiction, movies, novels, what have you, and it's to basically judge if a woman character, a female character, is being represented beyond a plot point. So the test is a low bar, and we still rarely have fiction that makes that bar. And the test is, do you have two female characters interacting with each other, but they're not talking about a man? Low bar, and we're still failing at it. So the people at GLAAD, the activist group for queer rights and representation, did a bit of a spin-off of this, and it's the Vito-Russell test. And it's essentially this: it's, do you have a character that is identifiably queer, that if they were to be removed from the story would not fundamentally change? So to come at it from the backside of things, if you have a character who's queer and you pull them out and the story doesn't change, that character's identity is that character's existence. So what the test is pushing is that you have queer characters that are more well-rounded and are not just plot points or identifiable by their sexuality or their gender. And that's another test that I think is that one's a bit deeper than the test for the Bechdel test there. But in the same breath, we're on all sides of the spectrum where quite often there's a story that is a queer character where that character is, the whole plot is their sexual identity or their gender identity. And we need more well-rounded characters than that. So.
I have more questions, but let's throw it open to the audience and see what questions might come from there.
If there is.
Any questions from the audience?
So does it tend to be the norm with writing about queer identity? I mean, that being the most important or the obvious idea in the story. Is that something that the writing tends to do now? And your writing leaves that out. So is this groundbreaking, writing?
I don't, there's never a book that hasn't been written yet. And so it's not groundbreaking in the sense that it hasn't been done before. Alan Hollingshurst is an amazing writer, and we talked about, was it Stephen Markley who did Deluge?
Deluge, yeah.
So at your recommendation, I picked that up, but then I'm a bit of a completist, so I had to go get Ohio as well, start there. But what I'm getting at is those voices are there. Right now, the largest sector of the narrative fiction world is more about queer story, as opposed to queer people in story. And so again, nothing groundbreaking, and again, nothing wrong with the other side of that too. It's just we're seeing this swamping of the queer voice for stories that are just queer, and that's great. I didn't have that growing up. I had, Scott Heim, Mysterious Skin. I had Ellis, Bret Easton Ellis, The Rules of Attraction, all of that, where you have quite deviant characters that are quite often based just on their identity. So, yeah.
Anybody else? For sure.
You mentioned your early career as an archaeologist, and I wondered, because I haven't read the book, or your other works, whether that connects, whether that experience connects in either in telling stories or in the things you tell in the stories.
Very much so, yeah. So the previous one, Extinction, did have a lot to do with the archaeology background, not just the places I went with that career, but also that story tells a lot of change through time. There's this breadth of humanity through that book that's found through the archaeology. In this one, it's more the first section there. Like with the job, I stayed in every small town around Alberta, through Saskatchewan. I went even to places that you flew into Fort Mac, you got on a helicopter and you went for another half hour kind of thing. You stayed in a camp that remote. There were people everywhere. There was artifacts everywhere. And so that to me is encouraging, because it shows, we're not new here. We might just have to look and learn from our past every once in a while. And that is that, especially the beginning part of this book, that shows through. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Jasper.
It's just excited that you mentioned Scott Heim, because it rarely comes up, but jumping off of that, the favorite author question, what are some other authors that inspire you or influenced your work?
Oh, thank you. Good one. I would say Rupert Thompson is definitely top of my list, and he has probably 15 or 16 books out now. He's a British writer, and he actually wrote an amazing story called Never Anybody But You. And it's about two women in love during the Second World War. And it is just this deep read. You're just immersed in these ladies' stories. It is just this beautiful book. What he does that I really enjoy is he's doing something different every time. He's done everything from, pretty much a literary thriller all the way through to, these historical fictions. He wrote one called, Secret. And that one's about wax making in Italy in the 1400s or something like that. Like, he's all over the place, and his writing is always fantastic. And actually, one of his books called The Five Gates of Hell was definitely one that I go back to again and again and again, just for no other reason than it is just this beautiful read, and I keep trying to figure out how he did it. So that's definitely a big one. More modern stuff, like I'm currently reading Miranda July All Fours. That's fascinating, totally outside of my realm of knowledge. So very interesting read there. I'm reading Andre, I'm going to get his last name wrong. He wrote Call Me By Your Name, and he's got Asimov. He's got a collection of essays, Homo Irrealis, and it's essays dealing with a state of irreality, not unreality, irreality. Don't ask me to explain it because I'm still trying to figure it out. It has something to do with the fact that, the description that he gives was, you watch people from a bus and it's not their lives that you're missing, it's their lives that could be. And so it's dealing with the potential of all lives and what they could be, not what they are and where they will go. Fascinating. Anyhow, I would throw those out there.
All right, I think unless there's any other questions that have come to mind, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Sean. So,
thank you.
So, we are all of us left behind. Tease us a little bit about what that's supposed to mean.
That's a line from a character he meets in Italy. Not gonna do any spoilers there, but that's one of those revelatory points that the main character has. And he's dealing with this fellow named Gio, who's a painter, retired fellow, painting and selling his paintings to tourists on the Spanish Steps. And the main character is telling his sob story to Gio, and Gio is basically giving him a, buck up, this is life, deal with it kind of thing. And at one point he says, you got to get over yourself because at one point we are all of us left behind. So you got to figure out how to live now, and one day you too will leave people behind. So that's the gist of the title.
And another character says to him, I think, the only thing for sure is that your last breath will be an exhalation.
Mm-hmm. That's actually Milos writing that.
Oh, is that Milos?
Yeah, it's the character there. Actually, I have that flagged, I think.
I didn't know whether you wanted to read it. It's my favorite part of the book. There's a quote from the grandfather's book, and without spoiling anything really, I'll just say that he starts reciting it from memory, and then this new friend joins him. So it's that integral to Serbian culture that she could finish it with him.
The only thing you can't change is that your last breath will be an exhalation. And the only thing you must do in life is take that last breath. The rest of your time is yours, however you want. And here at the edge of this minute and in the breaking forever ahead, I'll work to forget what the past has done to me. I'll work to remember only what's to come, to remember only the future. I'll remember that the table will be topped with food and circled by friends. I'll remember the glasses will be filled and the sunlight will come green through the leaves overhead and all around. I remember that I will never be empty. That's the line.
Do you have a favorite character or scene that you had the most fun writing, or that just connected with on the deepest level?
Without spoilers, when he is running through the prairies to escape, And that's really all I can say about that, because it was such an intense experience to write. And that one came out.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean Breeze Books. Welcome back to my channel. I have a very special presentation. Last night I did a live interview with the queer Canadian writer Bradley Sommer, who lives in Calgary, at his Saskatoon book launch at McNally Robinson. And McNally Robinson has kindly agreed to let me post their recording of that interview. And we had a lovely chat. And the recording, especially the audio, but the recording is good. And we had a very fun discussion. And please enjoy this. Our chat focused on Bradley Sommer's most recent novel. We are all of us, what is it called? Oh no. We Are All of Us Left Behind, which was just published a few weeks ago and which I just finished reading a couple days ago. So, for your viewing pleasure. So here it is for your viewing pleasure.
I barely had to tweak it. It came out and it was done.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So yeah, that was my favorite one to write, because that's also actually when he's chatting with Evelyn in the town as well afterwards, and they're watching the space station go over.
Yeah.
And
He thinks back to that a lot.
the big prairie skies and Evelyn's kindness. So character, Evelyn is definitely up there.
Yeah.
Sam is also, because he's kind of cheeky. He's one of his cohort that he meets in Italy, and he's a cheeky fella.
I don't want to spoil anything, but so maybe I'll say it mysteriously so that only Bradley will know what I'm talking about. But he has an interaction with a child on a plane, and I just love that so much. And then he thinks back to that too.
Yeah.
Or it plays quite a thematic part of the story. What are you working on now?
Well, I've got 2 books on the go. So the first one is Marianne versus the Death Model, and that thing is spinning out like crazy. I had a friend long ago, and she wrote a book and won some pretty hefty awards for it, and then was writing another book, and it was a massive book. So this regular book is 80,000, 60,000 words, somewhere in that range. And for her, the book the one she was working on turned out to be over 250,000 words, and she just couldn't finish. And it kind of was the stumbling block that she never stood up from afterwards yet. So I'm like, oh, surely I can. And so I'm at 150,000 words, and I've stalled out on it. I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this. So there's that one. And then I just got a Calgary Arts Development grant to do a new one, and I'm going to look at the power of submission, meaning, there's a certain trust one person gives another when they submit to someone else for whatever reason. And so the entirety of that book is going to be looking at that dynamic of power through submission.
It's not about the publishing world.
Oh, there's no power through submission, just rejections.
I think anybody has now suddenly another question has sprung to mind.
Can't wait to read this.
Oh,
Boy,
thank you.
Great
Thank you.
talk. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Well, here's a question I often hear at events like this, because I've only got one to end with, so I know it's going to be pulling them out. You haven't turned the tables once. What's wrong with you?
Well, I'm being nice.
So you've been at this a long while. I happen to know there's aspiring writers in the crowd. So what advice would you give?
Counter to the advice young writers often hear, which is the first one is never write what you know. If you only wrote what you know, for me anyway, it'd be very boring books. I think the better advice is to know what you write. So learn about what you're going to write. The other thing is there's a certain amount of persistence that's required, meaning, if you're sending in stories for publication and if that's the ultimate goal, you have to keep going and keep going and keep going, because rejection is the name of the game, and it's getting to be more so as time goes on from my experience. So sending out something too early is troublesome, meaning if you haven't spent enough time working on it and getting it to the best you can, and you send it out, you only get one shot at publishers, magazines, what have you. They won't look at it twice. So sending it out too early, definitely a problem, but I found the opposite is also true. Sending it out too late or not sending it out at all and agonizing over the same story and, taking out a comma and putting in a semicolon and then reversing it again. There seems to be this point that a lot of writers get to where they seize up trying to make it that perfect piece, and it never will be. I say the only reason to send something in is so you have to stop editing it. But in the same breath, I pick up books and I still edit them myself and others. So yeah, that would be advice, and find that joy in it. That's really the only thing you have control over, is the joy in putting the words on the page. If you have this dream of publishing and you're gonna buy a house and a Porsche and all this kind of stuff, don't have that dream. Dream about writing an amazing book. All that stuff may well come, but it's few and far between. So really the joy is, and like the joy I had for that first weekend writing this, where I sat down and I was immersed and gone for a whole day, and then the day following as well. That feeling is amazing. It's just this you're in this complete, I wonder if even that falls into that irrealis zone, but might well. So you have this complete disassociation with yourself and you're just in this entirely different world.
And I've always been curious about this, and I don't know if I've ever asked a writer about it, but there's something about the ego of the writer. Like it must be challenging then when you get it accepted, and then the editor comes on board and maybe wants to murder your darling. So what's that like?
So there's definitely ego involved, and that's something you have to constantly struggle with. And I had the fortune and misfortune of my second book being this, it landed big. And I was like, now I'll buy the house and the Porsche. And when I was doing the follow-up to that book, I was told by my agent, okay, well, we have to have a good follow-up. And I said, what does that look like? What's your advice? And she says, well, you got to write the same thing, but it's got to be different. And it has to be more. And I wrote that book and it didn't go anywhere. And that was that. And so with it, again, I always go back to the point that I love it. And it is always a mind game that, you're sending it out for submission, an editor will pick it up. I rarely have problems with editors because I recognize that they're trying to make the book better. And they're going to take what I did and they're going to, if they have a true sense of what the story is, they'll be able to take something that I did and blow it out of the water. And there's one scene in this with Sam's brother that the editor for this book, Debbie Willis, did an amazing job on. It was, I knew it was wrong. I knew there was something wrong there. I just didn't know what. And on her first set of notes, she put her finger on it and said, this is what's wrong. This is what you got to work on. And we worked on that scene for 6 months, back and forth. So I think one thing to know is you have to put, especially when you're dealing with editors, you got to put ego aside, because these people are not trying to make your book worse. Now, in the same breath, you have to have full autonomy over your work too, and have confidence that your work is what you want it to be as well, not being shaped into something else that you didn't intend. So, great question.
Last call for any audience members. verse questions. Okay, well, you have an acknowledgements section that's actually worth reading.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Out
And
of left field.
Yeah.
Sean, I like it.
here's one of the things that you say. And finally, it's such a weird thing that you read this. Should it be read or read? Read this, I'm sure. Read this, good. It's such a weird thing that you read this. It's such a trick that you can make pictures of it in your head, feel it too. Like you can live through it with only a little bit of trying. That's the magic of readers. And it's always been you making this book go. I love that. Can you say more about it?
That is something I believe fully as a reader, avid reader and voracious reader, and something as an author too, is a book is not, there's the misconception that an author sits there and they're drunk in their house coat for 6 months on end while they, bang away at the keyboard, and then they pull the last page out and they go, I did it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you pulled the house coat off.
That's afterwards because you got a shower because you've been sitting for 6 months in your own filth. But that's actually not true. I found the writing community to be very interactive, and I also found readerships to be very interactive. So I've done lots of festivals where there's primarily readers coming out, and it's a wonder to me that authors are busily talking to each other. They should be talking to readers, because readers are the other side of the conversation. And as I was saying earlier, I never presuppose what somebody's going to pull out of a book. I was in San Francisco at a thing, and a lady came up to me with fishbowl, and she goes, everyone in this book is trapped. And I was like, oh my God, she's right. I had not even thought about that, but every one of the 8 characters in there was trapped. So it made me want to ask if she needed help, because it's like, you're pulling this out. So, what's in you? But that's interesting. And so a book is a conversation. Like it's a lot of time for an author to sit down from, 6 months to 10 years. They're going to work on this. And, a reader will read through it and internalize it and do the heavy lifting of actually thinking about the words on the page. And it's even more special when you can sit down and talk to somebody about what they got out of the book. And so that's essentially what's being said there. So.
Well, I have been part of the conversation with your book, and now my second conversation with you, and I just have to say that I loved your main character so much.
Well, thank you, Sean. And I really appreciate what you're doing for the writerly crowd out here in Saskatoon. I think it's fantastic. It's a rare thing to be asked to come out to an event by somebody doing a book podcast or a book video, booktubing channel. Yeah. So I was really appreciative that you asked, and was so happy to say yes and be here.
This has worked out great, and I can't wait to have you back. But what a delight to chat with you in front of a live audience.
Yes, and thank everybody for coming too. Yes, thank you.
So are we fighting over the copies of Fishbowl that are left? Because I think there's like 4.
Go get that.
There.
Or one each, I'm just about.
Off you go.